Welcome to this week's episode of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. I'm your host, Varun, and this week it's a change of format that brings a change of fortunes. We're going to talk about the T20s between India and England, and I've got Ashwin alongside with me. Ashwin, how are you doing?
How long did you plan that change of format, change of fortunes line for?
I mean, considering we just decided to do the podcast like 5 minutes ago, not
Yeah,
very
that's
long.
that's pretty good, man. I'm good. It's funny how the mood, the energy is just so different when you have a series win. Like we lost today's game, which we're going to talk about, which is the third match. But I don't know. I'm lucky, I think, in a way that I missed last week's episode because I wasn't able to be around when you recorded. But I was not in a frame of mind to record after the test match loss, and I'm just feeling a lot more jolly about it this week. So pretty good after T20s.
Awesome. Yeah, same here, man. It's good. The T20 World Cup coming up. I think India has about 15 odd games before that World Cup, and there are, I think, three have already happened with a good result so far. So we're not going to run through each match like we usually do, but let's talk about the highlights from each of these three games. And then, of course, we have the ODI series coming up. So not much break between these two. So by the time you guys hear this, the ODI also might have started. But the first game, India won by 50 runs, made close to 200. Now, the scorecard, as I look through it, looks very much like the T20 scorecard that we want, right? Everyone going somewhere between 150 to 200 strike rate and not taking time to settle in, kind of coming in, making quick 30s. Rohit Sharma was back as captain. Deepak Hooda played. Kumar hit almost 40. Pandya was the standout. Ashwin, just what's the view on this batting lineup? Like, there's no Kohli, there's no Pant, yet we made 200.
Yeah, that was interesting, right? No Kohli, no Pant, and no Bumrah. And it's still I've said many times over the years on the show, unbelievable demonstration of bench strength, right? Like Kishan failed and you still get to almost 200. Just so pleased with Hardik at 5. I mean, this match was the Hardik Pandya show, right? He picked up. I think I texted you guys saying he made a 50 and only couldn't get the fifth wicket. Like, come on, what is this guy? I mean, to make a 50 and get a 4 for pretty close to a 5 for just unreal level of depth that guy adds. I think if you think about the last 6 months, the single the single biggest increase in any single player stock has been in that of Hardik Pandya. Nobody else has seen the kind of exponential growth he has in value. It's been unbelievable.
Yeah, and with that whole leadership of the IPL team, and I don't know how he's doing it, man. He's striking at 150 to 200, scoring 50s. It's a great sign for India. But yeah, one thing that was very odd to me is that they pushed Axar Patel above Dinesh Karthik in that, right? So it's very odd to me. I can't help but think that Karthik is the right man for the job, but somewhere he's just going to miss out because the Indian stalwarts are going to come back. So anyway, India 198 for 8 in that first game, beat England by 50 runs. The standout for me was Bhuvi because obviously Ashwin has already mentioned Hardik, but Ashwin, I had written Bhuvi off 2 weeks ago. Like I was like, why is this guy playing and he shouldn't be here? Now, is it his experience and is it a comeback? Is it England that the ball swings a little bit and that's why he's getting Butler off the first ball, or what is it like? Do you think Bhuvaneshwar is going to go to that World Cup?
I think he has shown himself over this series to be a serious contender, right? I think Bumrah and strangely probably Harshal are your probably top two picks from a quick bowling standpoint, if you can call Harshal a quick bowler, and and then Shami and Bhuvaneshwar are fighting for that next spot, and then you have the Arshdeep, Avesh, etc. So Bhuvi has put up a really good fight, and although he hasn't needed to do it recently or done it much recently, he can be useful with the bat. And as a number 9 batsman, if you will, he gives you some useful options. But yeah, to your point, swing, using the conditions well, just very disciplined, right? I mean, yeah, Butler coming off an unbelievable last few months to and getting the captaincy. And in the first match, I think he had his captain after Owen Morgan, who was incidentally in the commentary box. And Butler gets dismissed for a first bowler, right? And in losing the series in the first two matches. So just kudos to Bhuvi. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and England just never got going after that, right? They had two ducks. three or four single digit scores. Couple of guys in the middle, Harry Brook, Moin Ali, Chris Jordan, tried to kind of chip in, but 200 we know is always a tough ask. So they barely got to 150, which meant India had a great performance. And now we come to that second game. So Deepak Hooda has done no wrong. Um, and there was going to be all this chat about who gets dropped because Kohli and Pant are returning. And Kohli and Pant seem to be the incumbents, if I can't think of a better word than that, but the incumbents. And so there was a lot of chat happening prior to the game. Now, Deepak Hooda has played 4 back-to-back games where he scored very well. I mean, some of them were against Ireland. Um, he
I
played
think
that
he made
first one.
180 in the last 3 innings he played. 100, more than
Yeah,
180, of which one was a
exactly.
century. Like, just unreal.
Yeah. So in the peak form, how do you then go and drop a guy for Kohli? Now that was the chat. Kapil Dev also came out and said, uh, you have to pick informed players. A lot of us, including me, were actually of the opinion that Hooda should have played. But out comes India batting first. Two major things to talk about. The first, Pant walks out to open. Not the first time we've seen him, but I think it's only happened once before. And second, Kohli is playing. What are your thoughts and reactions to that?
Yeah, I mean, DJ doesn't get to be on this week's episode, unfortunately, but he would have been celebrating big time that Rishabh Pant walks out to open. You're right, it was only the second time. Majority of his international career, he's batted at 4, followed by number 5. And yeah, I was pretty happy with that, right? I think you mentioned briefly that the management decided to promote Axar up the order ahead of Karthik, and I think it's because of this lefty-righty thing. And in the squad that played the first ODI, first T20, excuse me, there was not really, and once Kishan got out, there was no lefty to Akshar, I think. And when Rishabh comes in, that gives you a little bit of variety. So I think it was a good try, right? Of course, we're going to eventually talk the third T20 where it's completely failed, but in a situation where you're batting first, you don't have a lot of pressure. Yeah, it's a good shout. I like the creativity. It was a good shot. I mean, 26 off 15 for the opener gets you a good power play. Does pretty well. Didn't go on to
I
convert
think,
or anything, but a good start.
yeah, I think he did his job if you think about it. 26 at a
Yeah,
strike rate of 175. What's that? There's some weird metric, right? Basra.
yeah. It's like
Bas
batting average
average
plus strike
strike
rate.
rate aggregate or something. Strike
Yeah.
Basra.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Incidentally, Harbhajan Singh's
Harbhajan's
wife
wife,
is
right?
Geeta. Look, so I expect me to know that. Why
Yeah,
the
it's
hell
pretty
did you
shocking
know
that
that?
I knew that. Actually, I don't know why I knew that, but anyway.
If you can figure out a nice acronym for Geeta or what GEET stands for,
Do we
that'll
think
be.
she came up with it?
You never know. Maybe she's like a
It's possible.
statistician, and
It's
it's like
possible.
Duckworth Lewis and Basra.
That would be amazing.
So anyway, if you think of Basra, Pant did a pretty good job. I mean, it's such a crazy stat to think about. But
Yeah.
so Pant did his job. Rohit had 1 or 2 really nice shots, and I mean, I'm just quickly trying to calculate. Rohit hit 31, out of which 24 were boundaries. So he basically hit 24 or 5 balls, and then 5 of the next 50,
Yeah,
or
pretty
something
much.
like that. So somewhere that has to change because remember he's wasted 1 out of 6 power play overs, right, in that
I have a
process.
question for you. There was the Twitter's Twitter, of course, but Rohit made 31 of 20, Pant made 26 of 15, and we're sitting here saying it's pretty good. I saw somebody tweet, and I'm not going to give them the right credit because I don't remember who it was, but basically said if Sanju had played innings like this, we would have said, he keeps throwing away chances. He gets off to starts and throws it away. So why is it that when Rohit makes 30 odd, Rishabh makes 30 odd, we're pretty okay with it because we ended up winning the game, maybe? Or you know what I mean? If Sanju had played this exact knot, 26 or 15, we would have said, he got to start again, looked so good, and then threw it away.
Maybe it's because he looks so good while
It's
doing it.
possible,
That's
yeah.
it. I think.
Well, it's possible.
I don't get me wrong. One of the openers should have made 50. So we're saying this in the context of the fact that this is a new opening pair. I think that's what it is. But
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
yeah, no, I mean, yeah. So if you think of how we kind of led into this, I think the context of that it's a new opening pair and that India's mindset is kind of changing. So I agree with you. I think we view Sanju Samson very harshly, and playing 30 or 15 is absolutely crucial to a T20 game. I just like the guy so much that I feel that expectation of him doing better, especially after how his shot look. I mean, let's be honest, Pant's shots like it works because the field is up. Okay, he's not done well in limited overs game, but a Samson could come in at number 4 and still hit 30 or 15. So yes, we view him harshly. One of my friends had said that he's basically a victim of the expectations that everyone has on him because he's not doing a bad job. But it comes into the next point, which is Kohli is batting at 3. So even if Samson is available, Hooda is available, Kishan is available, Shaw is available, there's no point because, yeah, I mean, let's talk through this because Rahul is not in this lineup, right? So where does Rahul now fit in?
I I don't actually think he does, which is insane. And sorry, I think he will. They'll find a way. They'll squeeze him in. But there's really no mathematical way Team India has a really good shot at the T20 World Cup to play our best 11 and play all three of Rohit, Kohli, and Rahul. The math just doesn't work, and that is a scary thought. But anyway, I said this a few weeks ago. I think they will play all three. I don't think we'll have the best World Cup, and that'll be what eventually forces the change to younger blood. But yeah, all three don't fit in if you are playing what objectively is probably your truly best 11.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's where it's going to get tricky because Surya Kumar Yadav has to play at 4. Actually, if you think like in our ideal lineup, does Pandya play at 5 or 6? Because you've
For
got,
me, for me, he plays 5.
okay, fair enough. But let's think about it from the perspective of Pandya and Jaddu bowling 5 overs.
Yeah, so call them
So
6 and
you,
7.
yeah, call them
Like
6 and 7. So
where, yeah,
essentially,
you need
uh,
5 batsmen.
the guy who misses out, which is exactly what I said about 7-8 minutes ago, is Dinesh Karthik, right?
Mm-hmm.
If a Rahul walks back in, but anyway, let's come to that. But Kohli, 1 of 3. What did you make of that?
Man, just frustrating, right? Like I don't even know what to say. The third match was arguably worse, where he did start hitting and get it. Like, so he walks back into this side. I think he made a 1 run in the, and I'm jumping ahead. I'm sorry. He made 1 run in one match, and I think it was 11 in the second. So you've now replaced Hooda, who made 183 in 3 innings, with a guy who made 12 runs in the 2. Like, just disappointing. Like, it just hurts to see the Kohli like this, man. I don't actually have much else to say. It just hurts to see him like this.
And there's two schools
To,
of thought,
and
right?
by the way,
There's
sorry, to the debutant, right? To Gleason, whose first 3 international wickets ever ended up being Rohit Sharma, Virat Kohli, Rishabh Pant.
was he left-hander or was he right-hander?
I think
Gleason.
he's right-handed, which would have,
Okay,
but
because usually the top 3 fall to left-handed bowlers, right?
yeah,
Bolt, Afridi. That's typically how it happens. But hey, this is not a
that's really
knockout game. But I mean, last point before we go for the break. There's two schools of thought, right? The first is give Kohli enough game time because he is going to be part of that setup. What is it? It's August, September, 3 months from now.
yeah. Three
It's
months, 15 more
basically
games to the
so.
point. It's
So
gonna happen,
he's
right?
going. He's going to be part of the setup. So do you give him more games because people like Hooda can probably go from the start, or do you say that Kohli has so much experience behind him that he needs to make way for the Hoodas to play enough games? Because the last thing you want is Deepak Hooda in the squad having played 5 games before a T20 World Cup. So I don't know. Any thoughts on that before we get into the break?
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's so hard to see. I keep saying this, but to see Virat like this because we're just not used to it. I mean, objectively, you drop him. I think you have enough depth if you bring Huda in for the next 15 games, and let's say this form doesn't continue, you have a couple more people down the list who are ready to keep it going and to keep bringing you fresh blood, different kind of energy, different ability to hit. Let Kohli focus on getting his red ball cricket back to where he wants it to be, but it's not going to happen. So I agree. I think if 80% Rohit and Dravid have decided Kohli will play a role in the World Cup, which it seems like they have, which he's probably earned because of history. And Rohit has been defending him in the press conferences just today too. Then you play him as much as you can because get him game time, get him his form back before the World Cup.
Yeah, in fact, Rohit, I just got, as we're recording, I got a notification on Crick Buzz that says Rohit backs Kohli, endorses new batting philosophy. If you're talking about form, it goes up and down. The quality of the player doesn't go bad. Let's take a pause on that note because when we come back, we're going to talk about the third T20 and we'll talk a little bit about more about this new philosophy of Indian cricket. I don't know, Razball, Casball, whatever it's called, but we'll be back after the break.
Hello, hello. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcasts Network. On The Habit Coach, Ashton talks to skipping world champion Chetan Tambe about his journey to the top. On Smarter with Sid, Siddharth decodes what goes into a successful professional partnership. On Marathi Khidkitun, the Deshmukhs analyze the statistical occurrences of certain words in various languages. On A Sip of Finance, Priyanka teaches us how to manage multiple bank accounts. And on Probation Se Promotion Tak, Abhinav tells us how we can convert our career anxiety into our greatest strength. Do not forget, IVM Podcast has just launched its merch and the first line is out now. Head to the IVM Podcast website, click on the shop tab to check out our first collection of t-shirts. Do follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any platform you're listening to. You can also check us out on YouTube. We're also doing a small listener survey to better understand how you respond to our shows and advertising on the network. We would really appreciate it if you could spare a few minutes to fill it. It helps us build better shows for you. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: Boat Lifestyle, Small Case, Cap Gemini, Intel vPro, and Intel. Future Banao Wonderful with Intel-powered laptops.
Welcome back after that break. We were talking about
Who's Casball?
I mean, I'm just putting K for Kohli. I'm putting
Oh,
I'm trying to.
was Raz for Dravid or Rohit? Or because I thought it was for Shastri, and I was going to tell you that Shaz is gone now.
No, that's Shaz ball. Raz is definitely Rohit.
I mean, that does not at all sound like Rohit. But anyway, Raz sounds like Rassi Van der Dusen's coaching style.
That's great. Right. So that second T20, India won by 49 runs. So based on the trend, we should have the third T20 by 48 because it was 50-49. Anyway, very quickly on England's performance in the second one. Once again, first ball by Bhuvi, Roy got out, right? So yeah, he's making a knack of this, making a habit of this. Butler again didn't get going. And then when you look at this lineup, your Malan and Livingston are dangerous, but I think you need a Butler to step up and go for it. Bhuvi ended up with 3 wickets, Bumrah 2, Hardik and Harshal 1 apiece, and Chahal bowled only 2 overs but picked up 2 for 10. So I think bowling performance for me was really used over there. And now
two quick
India,
things, really quick. One, it speaks to the importance of having that sixth bowling option, which I know we'll talk in the last match. They didn't give themselves a sixth bowling option, and that's just so difficult, especially if you're trying younger players. And 2, quick shout out to Ravindra Jadeja, 46 off 29. At one point, I think when he would have walked in, what was he batting at? He was batting at 6. So when he would have walked in, it was 89 for 4, and then Hardik got out. It became 89 for 5. And to anchor your team to 170 off of the back of a well-made 46, like full credit. Jadeja with the bat has been a revelation in, of course, Test cricket, but he's showing he can do it in the limited overs format as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we come to that third game, and like Ashwin rightly said, it firstly 2-0, we won the series. Okay, I think all of us were hoping there would be some experimentation because there's honestly no glory in 3-0 versus 2-1, at least for me in a bilateral T20 series. So India came out and decided to completely overhaul the bowling. They brought in Avesh Khan, Umran Malik, Ravi Bishnoi, right? So all guys who are new deserve that chance. But let's talk first, Ashwin, with that 5 bowler strategy. I think India knew what they were going in for. I think it was, I have to give these guys game time because remember, look, Avesh Khan, Ravi Bishnoi, I think are in the mix, okay, for that World Cup squad. Let's talk about Umran Malik. What do you think? There's this debate going on. He's been brought in too quickly versus somebody whose pace is so good needs to be brought in so quickly. I personally think he's been brought in too quickly, but I'd love to hear your view.
Yeah, it's kind of easy to say after he bowled at 1 over for 14 in the 12-over game against Ireland, and then he bowled 4 overs today for 56, right? Yeah, he picked up Jason Roy, who was looking really good, or who was making some runs. But I I I don't think we need more quicks to be coming into the mix in our T20 setup at this point. So yes, he had a great IPL. Yes, he's a breakthrough bowler. He can bring a lot of pace. Yada yada, all the great things. But I just think he got brought in. I agree with you. I think got brought in a little too quickly. I think he needs to be with the side. He needs to play India A cricket or whatever it's called now. He needs to play with the touring side. He needs to play against sides that are touring India. He needs to be at that just next and highest level. I don't think the IPL alone, having been played in those two cities for the whole season with all the different factors, wasn't necessarily enough to bring him to the side. I'm happy we're taking the decision to accelerate players, but in this case, it doesn't seem like it was the right call.
Yeah, there's too many players. There's just too many players to accelerate. I mean, he's come in and given 56 in 4 overs. Okay, it was a match that, it was great practice for him. But think about this now. He's taken the spot of somebody else who could have got that match practice. And I don't know, man. It's just it feels like the team is pretty set, and you're looking at 2, 3 different players, and you want to have a nice big squad because either injury or COVID being different factors. And so I understand, choosing a Ravi Bishnoi. I understand choosing an Avesh Khan. I'm pretty sure Shami will be in the mix, and he's just been rested. But it just somehow doesn't make sense to me to keep playing Umran Malik. But look, he's young. He could surprise us all. All it'll take is a World Cup game, which is important, and he picks up 3 or 4 wickets because of his pace, and we'll be sitting here saying, "Yeah, it was a good decision." So everything we do is just kind of in that moment. But Ashwin, talk through England's batting a little bit. 215 for 7. This is what we were expecting from the first T20, wasn't it? The openers still didn't get off to a fantastic start, but it kind of was in that 20s, 30s range. And then David Malan and Livingston just kind of took the attack to the Indian bowlers, especially in the middle overs, because they started hitting after the power play and went on till almost the 18th, 19th over.
Yeah, it was just brutal hitting. Right now, they played where they were at Nottingham, right? So a slightly smaller ground than the others they've played at, and that's just the brand of cricket we've gotten so used to with England, right? We just didn't really see that. Now, it's so interesting because all three teams in this series, all three matches were won by the teams batting first, which is just counter to what we are used to at the IPL and in T20 format in the subcontinent. So Butler even said that at the toss, right? Having lost the first 2 matches after batting first, he's like, we'll try something different. We're going to bat first this time. Or lost the matches bowling first. They said, we'll try something different. We'll bat first. Put up a huge total and just, although we'll talk through some heroics that almost it took India there. Just the brand of cricket England knows. Nothing to fear. Go after it from ball one. I think when you're missing Bumrah, Bhuvaneshwar, Chahal, the kind of caliber of the guys who can take wickets when they need to, and like India's best attack when you're missing them, India's weaknesses showed. And credit to Malan and Livingston, great knock, and Harry Brooks scored some quick at the end. Chris Jordan smashed some at the end, and yeah, just exactly the brand of cricket you expect from England.
And so this was going to be a real test for us, right? Because we now have to come out, chase 215 with Rohit and Kohli batting in this experimental lineup or whatever you'd like to call it.
How is it experimental with Rohit, Rishabh, Kohli as your top three?
Yeah, exactly. So, firstly, Pant, man, what a disaster. He edged it onto his thigh. Then Butler caught it. And then Pant was convinced he never touched it, right? And ultimately, Rohit kept probing him, because I think Rohit knew. And Pant kept saying, I didn't touch it. The time ran out. Pant took a review. The umpire told him, you can't. They showed the replay, and he got a nick on it, right?
Yeah, he had a nick before it hit the thigh pad. It was so weird. Yeah.
So he got out for 1. Now, okay, look, I think the fact that they're putting Rishabh Pant to open means they believe in him. He's got a long run. And I think that is probably the only place he can play. So if you ask my personal opinion, I think be ready to watch him open for a lot of these next 10, 12 games that we have before the World Cup. So, that's there. But Kohli then walks in, hits a 4, hits a beautiful 6, like one of the best shots of the match. And remember, England has scored 215. Best shot of the match. And then gets out next ball. And so everyone's now talking about, he's hit, he's got out again. But his Basra was like 195.
Stop talking about Basra. You're too excited about the Basra. But
Okay, let's take out the fact that it was 11. There are a lot of articles that have come out since last night? Is there a mindset shift that is happening where Kohli is saying, I will just go for it from ball one, and if it connects, good enough, but I'm going to be happy with a 25 of 10?
yeah, I think it depends on match situation, right? Like if you're batting first, the openers who got a decent platform on the board when Kohli walks out, he's going to consolidate a little. I think he walks in at 2 for 1 in the seventh ball of the match of the innings, and you're chasing more than almost 11 runs and over. So he had to start going for it. He got 4 or 6, and that's the point that Rohit was trying to make. Is he backed him at the end, saying, "Listen, it didn't come off today, but the philosophy, to your point, was the right one." I I think they're going to start running out of excuses, to be honest, right? And that's the scary thing for me, as I sit here and talk about who I believe could not play a game again and still will be one of the greatest batsmen to have ever lifted a cricket bat. And it's scary, but yeah, it's just you cannot score 1 and 11 in your 2 matches, and it's just not good enough. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, it's not good enough. I think he probably shouldn't have played these last two T20s. I don't know what's going to happen over the next 10 games. But let me just try to simplify this. If he's going to play, I'd rather he plays this way than make 30 off 31. So if he's playing, let's hope it's this way. But again, we keep talking about this. Somebody's going to have to give way. Somebody's role is going to have to change. Pandya and Jadeja are probably going to have to become pure finishers now if you're going to play Kohli and Rahul. Rahul's game, by the way, may change as well when he comes in, because he may have to be slotted in at number 5 if they're going to open with Pant, which is not fair to Rahul, but it's all because of this guy who's at number 4, who, if you ask me, is among the top 1 to 5, is the only guy whose place is cemented in this squad. Surya Kumar Yadav, Sky. Did you watch that innings?
Man, I didn't watch all of it because at 31 for 3, I think it was, I had Djokovic versus Kyrgios on the second screen, like I know you did, the Wimbledon men's final. I was paying attention to that a little. And then when that finished, and we were, 30, 40 odd for 3, I just started up. It was about lunchtime here. I was up doing some chores around the house and making lunch and stuff. And then slowly I started hearing the commentator's voice get more and more animated, get more and more excited. And then I buckled down to watch it. And it was unbelievable. Like the hitting from Sky alone, entirely alone, right? You made 117 out of your team's 198. It was just bonkers the way he was hitting it. I mean, if one other person had stood up, and a little bit of credit to Shreyas, but nobody else backed him. Not a single other person made any runs of note. If one other person had stood up, India might have been able to chase 215 despite losing your top 2 wickets within the power play, within the first 3 overs. Your top 3 wickets in the power play.
Yeah, I also similar. I didn't watch it from the start, but I picked it up when he was like 30, 40. And there was a point where every ball was a boundary or a 6 that he hit. And he was hitting it across the ground. He was opening the face of the back to avoid the fielders. He was hitting it past third man. He was hitting the 6s at long on, long off. He was playing his classic kind of, I don't know how to describe that, but it was like the Bumrah shot in the Stuart Broad over where he hit him for 6 behind fine leg. He was hitting all of those shots. His Basra was 330 for all those who are...
You're just obsessed.
All those guys who are talking about getting a Basra of 200. His is 330. But equally, Shreyas Iyer, did he play a match losing knock? Like, was this Shreyas Iyer or was this like Virat Kohli batting? 28 of 23, strike rate of 120. And what did he do? It was a disaster for him. What's happening is this media getting to him that Shreyas Iyer can't play the short ball? Is this the end of him? Because Suresh Raina went through something similar. How is this guy going to come back? And again, where does he bat? He's batting at 3. He's batting at 5. There are some days he's going to bat at 6. What's happening?
Yeah, man. So 2 things. One, it's a little unfair to throw both and true. I believe this for Umran and Avesh and Bishnoi as well. It's a little unfair to throw you in one match that is a irrelevant one for India and not have to be surrounded by the best other 10 players in the country, and then if you don't do well, say, oh, this guy can never play again, right? So that's one, it's a little unfair. Two, I absolutely think you're right. It's been the media coverage on air has been detrimental to him. But I will defend him to the extent to say when one guy makes a century, the other scorecard reads 11, 11, 1, 6, 7, 5, 1, and 2. I don't blame the guy who made 28. So it's very hard for me to sit here and say the guy who made the second most runs, more than double of what Virat made, more than double of what Rohit made, quadruple of what Jadeja made, more than quadruple of what Karthik made, right? Like, it's a bit silly for me. He made 28 times as many as what Rishabh made, if you want to put it like that, right? So when it's a bit silly for me to sit here and say he was the match losing knock. The match losing knocks were everybody else who didn't show up today when Sky was there to anchor.
Yeah, fair enough. Maybe I don't know. I just feel Shreyas Iyer could have either rotated the strike a bit more, gone
Yeah.
after it, because at the end we lost by a little bit. And look, when you chase 2-1-5, Jaddu and DK, it's always going to be hard. Now, they should have probably known that Moeen had one over left and tried to play a little bit smarter. But anyway, I think overall great knock. Haven't seen a knock like that in a very long time in a T20 game. Sky was just phenomenal, deserves every bit of that praise that he's getting. I think I read something that said it's the highest difference between the number one and number two score in a team. 89 runs or something
Interesting.
between Sky and
It's
Shreyas.
also one of the highest scores. I don't know the exact number. One of the highest when you're batting at 4 or below, right? It's very rare to see centuries from number 4 or below in T20 international cricket, right? So just full credit to him. That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's a wrap on the T20s. We've just got a very quick ODI squad update. So the ODIs, like we mentioned, are starting. By the time you hear us next, we'll probably be doing the wrap on the ODI series. Biggest inclusion for me is Shikhar Dhawan. He comes back in. And with no Rahul, I think he's definitely going to open the innings, especially because they've also made him captain for the West Indies tour, which we didn't really know about till a couple of days back. So India is going to tour West Indies with Dhawan. I think this is the 7th or the 8th captain in the last 6 months, which is also insane. And Ganguly said it's all circumstance. That's why it's happened. But
Sure.
I think it's pretty clear, right? You've got, Rohit and Shikhar. You've got Kohli. You've got one out of Sky and Shreyas who will play. Pant, and then Pandya Jadeja. So it's suddenly the ODI setup looks a little bit more simple, less players to choose from. It's basically a debate between Shreyas and Sky. And yeah, you've got Shami, you've got Bumrah, you've got Prasidh. Now I'm excited to see Prasidh because I think he's going to do well overseas. I think he's going to be in the test squad soon enough. But ODI squad looks pretty set if you ask me. It'll be an interesting series. It might be tough to watch after tests and T20s because there's so much happens in both these formats. ODI is definitely longer. But that's all this week, guys. We're going to be back next week to talk about the ODI series. Let us know how you thought you liked this episode. Drop in any comments on Twitter, on YouTube, wherever you listen to this. And we will see you guys next week.